Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Rukas again, and we are on week 5. You're almost through the course, so I want you to stick with it. And again, as always, any questions you have, please let the instructor know so that they can help you out with it. We do have a course, and you may or may not have taken it yet, that deals exclusively with social justice issues. But to not address issues of race and class in a policing course is an injustice. So as a result, while these issues will be handled much more in the social justice course, I wanted to bring them to your attention on this, in this unit, so you can look at some of the issues, specifically how they impact policing. All right? Social justice issues have always plagued policing. If you remember, we talked about the various corruption that had been found in police departments. And unfortunately, in the 1800s, as modern policing was developed, unfortunately, when we look at corruption in the 1800s, by and large, it was aimed at people of color and people that were poor. And while we've taken great steps to reduce racial bias, there's still a problem. African Americans are disproportionately incarcerated. They are incarcerated at 4 times their rate of the population. African Americans make up approximately 13% of the population at large and make up 48% of the incarcerated population. Something's not right there. We either have to accept one of two theories, one of which is that African Americans as a race are more criminally inclined, which is not acceptable, or that there's something in the policing and something else going on. Now, when we look at issues of social justice, and we look at African Americans and why they are incarcerated at such a higher rate, the question becomes, is it an issue of race, and is it racial prejudice, or is it because that African Americans have much higher rates of poverty than other groups as a whole? And is it the fact that they don't have the resources to interact with the criminal justice system, and that lack of resources makes them more susceptible to policing actions? Here are some facts, though. Driving while black is real. Study after study has been done that shows when we control for all elements, African Americans are more likely to be pulled over for traffic stops. Now, research has shown that when we ask officers why this is done, it tends to be because there's a higher correlation between African Americans and crime, at which point that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The study I want to point out that's the seminal study on this that everybody references is a study that was done in the late 90s by the ACLU in Baltimore. What the ACLU did in Baltimore is they looked at vehicles that had traffic violations and looked at the likelihood of them being pulled over. And this was to look at issues of race versus class. And traffic laws are so complex that it's really hard. At any given time, approximately 85% of us are violating some traffic law or another. All right? The Baltimore experiment looked at it and looked at cars that were violating traffic laws and still found that looking at all cars that were violating traffic laws, that African Americans and Latinos were still substantially more likely to be pulled over. So that kind of took the class element out of it, because many of traffic violations are due to the fact that cars are not kept up well. So we see similar statistics as well in many broken windows policing philosophies, where things like stop and frisk also disproportionately impact people of color. That has caused grave tensions and has led to the rise of movements such as Black Lives Matter. Another issue of social justice, and this is more class-based, is the issues of fines and fees. By and large, when an officer gives a ticket, an officer doesn't calculate how much this is going to cost, or more importantly, someone's ability to pay for it. Now, anyone that's received a ticket knows that you don't pay a ticket because you really want to pay a ticket. You pay a ticket because there's a bigger penalty if you don't pay the ticket. Plain and simple. Now, the issue where issues arise is when people don't have the resources to pay a ticket. Now, there are many places where people can use community service. However, these options are normally not made available to them, or they're not aware of these options until they get into such deep trouble with the criminal justice system where fines have increased substantially. When an officer gives a ticket, the officer doesn't point out that there's a possibility of a payment plan at $25 a month where somebody can pay this ticket off. the individual that receives that ticket is just given the amount of the ticket and told to go to a website and make payment or go to the county courthouse. And it's only those that have more knowledge that are able to get this, and they don't end up getting the knowledge of a community service option after they're up, because if you don't pay your ticket, you have fines and fees that go on that, and then fines and fees on top of that, so that a 200 fine can easily become thousands of dollars that requires much more effort to pay off than if somebody knew options that were available to them in the first place. Similar to driving while black is officer discretion. Officer discretion is an integral part of the criminal justice system. We don't want officers arresting for every infraction of the law they find. How many of us have jaywalked and want to get a ticket for it? So as a result, police need to use discretion. However, discretion by its very nature is discretionary. As such, if, for example, one officer doesn't consider marijuana a violation that's so substantial, or the officer is weighing the fact that I have situations right now that are more concerning than this marijuana violation, then I'm going to let this marijuana violation go, and another officer doesn't feel that way, people feel that they're not getting equal treatment. That said, officers are human beings. So as a result, discretion is an integral part of it. But as long as we have police discretion, we will have people questioning police discretion, which is going to be a major issue that continues for social justice issue when looking at social justice. These problems combined can frequently lead to distrust of police. And where we run into trouble is when residents get upset because they feel it's easy for them to get arrested, but they don't feel that police come and give them the same level of service. This is one of the complaints we saw in Ferguson, Missouri in relation to the riots there. One improvement that has been made to address these issues are body cams, but body cams are not a solving for everything. And I want to point out one last thing that I think is incredibly important in this, and that is that this can be very frustrating for an officer on the ground. An officer looks at this, an officer looks at his or her policing and goes, I'm not racist, but then wonders why people resent the officer even though the officer is not racist. And the thing is, what officers need to realize is this is part of a much bigger social issue that officer can't solve, which is something that's frequently very frustrating. With that, I'm going to end this. I almost forgot. We need to look at your rough draft. Yes, I want a complete rough draft, okay, of the 2,000 to 2,500 word paper. Now the question is why are you making me do a complete rough draft 2 weeks before it's due? What I want to be able to do, and what your professor will be doing, is reading this paper over and telling you what's right and what's wrong with it, so that you're able to correct it when you hand your final draft in. It behooves you to do a complete draft, get the feedback to be able to fix it so that you can get the grade you want, rather than having you hand a paper in and find out that it's not the grade you want and not be able to fix it. So with that, I wish you the best of luck with your rough draft, and have a good one. Take care. Bye.